But first, I just don't get some of our leaders now. I don't get why they are making life so hard for so many Australians with bans that make no sense. I mean, you take yesterday, Mother's Day. Yesterday, apparently it was too dangerous for anyone in Victoria, anyone at all, to go visit their mum. Visits were banned.
The rules remain in place. Then Victoria Police are out there and they will find people.
But just one day after Mother's Day, that very same Premier, Daniel Andrews, says 5 people can now go on a visit as of tomorrow night. Yesterday, visiting Mum on Mother's Day, deadly dangerous. Couldn't happen in Victoria. Elsewhere, you could go for 2 or 5 people. But apparently now it's perfectly safe, at least for 5 people to drop in. 5. Too late for Mother's Day, of course. And there seems to me something going on, especially in Victoria, that seems authoritarian, petty, almost spiteful. It's like, you know, they think the meaner, the harder, the tougher we are, the more they'll get the message. It's a frightening insight, really, into how freedoms can be ripped away, provided you scare the public stupid first. And provided, of course, you have a police force that will smash gatherings like the pro-freedom demonstration yesterday outside Parliament. True, some of them, people there were conspiracy nuts, but even so, being arrested for insisting on their right to meet other people out in the open air and sunshine. People are getting restless in Victoria. And why not? For instance, every state bar Victoria, schools, well, they're safe now to start opening up again. The other state premiers think, well, that is perfectly safe for the kids, and most medical experts agree. In Western Australia, nearly 3/4 of students were already back in class last week. But in Victoria, the Premier still won't say when students can return. Maybe by the end of term, he says, we'll see. He'll announce it later. And you just wonder, how can this be? How can, well, I don't know, maybe is it a different virus in Victoria? But I'll give you a really telltale example. Around the country now, restaurants and cafes can slowly reopen. Too slowly, in my opinion. They can have up to 10 customers at a time. But in Victoria, restaurants and cafes remain banned. But the telltale thing here is the explanation the Premier gave for not doing what every other state leader agreed to last week with the Prime Minister.
For cafes and restaurants, we might not have to stick with a number of 10. We might be able to go higher than that. I won't speculate on what that number is, but I think that the feedback from many, many businesses is that at just 10 patrons, it's really hard to be viable. If we just wait these 3 weeks, if we do the testing, if we have that further assurance that the significant steps we've taken today isn't causing us trouble that we can't manage, then I think we can take a bigger step potentially in June for cafes and restaurants.
Now, this is a real socialist talking here. This is a Premier who says, oh, well, I reckon most restaurants and cafes can't make money if they reopen for just 10 patrons, so I'm going to ban them for another 3 weeks. You just wonder, who is he to make that call? I mean, 10 customers, yes, it is too few for most, I'm sure of that. But why take away that freedom to open from those businesses who reckon it might be worth it for them? This is an authoritarian mindset that's been encouraged in some of our leaders by this crisis. And then there's also a refusal to admit that there has, in fact, been an overreaction that is destroying this economy. 1 million Australians out of work. A budget deficit that Deloitte Access Economics today estimated would hit $143 billion this year. $143 billion. It's going to be in surplus a few months ago. But talking about that, the overreaction and the refusal to admit it, the Prime Minister, his medical experts, told us in March that between 50,000 and 150,000 of us would die from this virus. In fact, the death toll so far, fewer than 100. But no leader will admit this was wrong.
So 2 months ago, you insisted to us that if you shut down
it had to be for 6 months. That was the only way that you could squash the virus. How did you get that wrong?
I don't share your certainty about the future that you seem to profess about how the coronavirus operates. We still have a long way to go on this, and I think it's quite dangerous, I think, to assert that this is all over. The reason that we're opening things up again is not because the virus is beaten. The virus is still out there. It hasn't gone anywhere. It is still out there. There may be only 700 or so active cases in Australia now, but Australia is still very much at risk. The reason we're reopening is we've put protections in place.
He's right, particularly with winter coming, the virus is still out there, but not all of the protection we imposed based on those initial projections of 150,000 deaths were smart or useful. I mean, why was golf and fishing banned in Victoria? That's purely nonsense. And that kind of stuff undermines trust in the warnings now that we must still be careful. And undermining trust like this, with overreactions and heated rhetoric, that could be fatal if people stop listening, because this virus is dangerous. It is still out there. You should still wash your hands. You should still avoid crowds. Stay at home if you're sick and generally protect yourself. But now you also need protection from politicians who have let the panic and their new power go to their heads.